What is up, everybody? Today I am joined by none other than Jose Rolon, and I got to say, man, we were just engaged together, so everyone in our industry will know what that is. And people came up to me and they were like, "Hey, do you know Jose?" And I'm like, peripherally, like I know of him, but I don't think we've ever had a moment to connect.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Do you know his story?" And I'm like, "Nah, not really. I know like a little bit on Instagram." And they were like, "You have to get this guy on your show." So immediately I suck you out. I found you one night and we just started talking.
Yeah.
We talked about fatherhood and some really awesome topics. We talked about, we're both from similar backgrounds and upbringings. I thought that was really cool to connect on. We talked about raising children and we talked about your story, which we're going to get into, right?
Yeah.
But before we do that, if you could just tell everybody who you are, just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get to it.
Yeah. So I'm Jose Rolon, and I have a wedding planning event company called Jose Rolon Events. And yeah, I've been kicking it since 2013, but been in the business for about 10 years.
Awesome, man. And what I initially thought, just from reading your bio, something I always talk about is you had this hunger to start at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So you walked in, and this is where I
Yeah.
think most people, especially, we're probably comparable in age, I'm going to guess. But 20-somethings now, they want to start at the top.
Yeah,
And
those
I think
millennials, man.
but I don't want to just knock them. But yeah, the millennials and Gen Zers, they want to be CEO before they get to be the mail delivery person, not realizing that if you walk in as the mail delivery person, you can go vertically up the entire company. So you literally
right.
walked in to the foundry
I did.
and said, "I will work here for free."
Yeah, I mean, true story. I was 33 years old, and look, I grew up in the projects, and I'm used to hustling, and I think when I was a video editor before, and I was thinking about, I was ready to get out on my own and get away from the computer, and so when we got married, my husband and I, we got married, and then I loved the process, and I was like, this is something that I think I might want to do, and everybody kept encouraging me to do it. So we got married at the foundry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and at the time, and it still is considered to be like, one of the top coolest places to get married in
For
New
sure,
York City, right?
sure.
And so I thought, if I work here for a year, I'm going to get to, cultivate these amazing relationships with all these vendors because of the best they were going through there, right? So, yeah, I mean, at 33 years old, I walked in and I was like, I will intern a year for free if you allow me to do events.
That's some humble pie, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
I think the mindset at 33 can often be like, "Fuck that! I'm not gonna do anything for free. I'm worth X already because I've lived a certain amount of life." 22 might be easier to sell that, but you did that as a grown man.
Yeah, and I think like some of the kids now they think that they want that big game now, or they have that big game now. And I think, for me, I'm always thinking about long-term big game, right? So, even though at 33 years old, it's not so common to walk into a place and say, I'll intern, I knew, I was already projecting 5 years, 10 years down the line. And so, yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It wasn't that I actually ended up working for free for a year. I mean, within a few weeks, they saw what I was doing with them. And so I was already on their payroll within a few weeks. And then within 6 months, I was like negotiating a salary. So, yeah, I mean, it worked to my advantage. Instead of being there for a year, I was there for 2.5 years before launching on my own.
See, but I think that's where the value in the story is. If you went in and said, "Hey, I'm Jose. I've never worked in the wedding industry. I need a $100,000 salary," you don't wind up with that. Whatever the salary is at the end of the day. When you come in and with that true humility, then you get to where you want to go because they saw, okay, wait, this kid's willing to work for free. Then they see the value in that. And if they don't see the value, you could always walk away. But they saw the value, and next thing you know, now you're working there full time.
Yeah.
And I think all too often we just look at the end result and not the middle of what it takes to get to the end.
Yeah, and I knew it was going to work out, and then, yeah, I mean, it was exactly how I might have stayed there a little bit longer than I expected, but it was because I actually really loved working there, and everybody there, they're like family, and it's a small family-owned business. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people that I work with today are people that I had relationships with at the foundry.
And that was then how many years ago?
That was 2013.
All right, so within 6 years from starting there, you went from not being in the wedding industry in New York City, fair to say, right? From 33 to working there to now owning a wedding production company, and but you did the work.
I did the work. I hustled.
You hustled. Yeah, well, I think that gets into something I always talk about. This is I'm half Puerto Rican, half Italian. My dad
Yeah.
came over to this country when he was 22 years old, and I say this ad nauseum because I think we've lost touch in our current political climate
Yeah.
with the value of people who were not born in the United States. Even though
Yeah.
Puerto Rico is a commonwealth of the United States, people always confuse
Yeah.
that. And I always say he immigrated. He really migrated.
I love getting the passport question.
That we do not need passports.
Do you have a passport?
We do not need passports.
I do, but not for Puerto Rico.
we speak a different language. Like, just to be clear, it's Spanish. But he came to this country at 20 years old, not speaking English, and
Yeah.
built a life for himself and brought his siblings over, who eventually all became successful in their own right and developed families and all those things. So he lived the American dream,
Yeah.
even though we're Puerto Rican. And
So you're first generation.
I'm from first generation here, yeah.
Yeah.
First generation to go to college, all those things. My
amazing.
dad has a fifth grade education, so, but he dedicated his life to provide a life for his two sons and his daughter. And I think the beauty of that story has been lost in our political climate right now, because
Yeah.
we're hating on that whole immigrant mentality because of what's going on. But from what you say, the hustle, there is something to Puerto Rican hustle,
There is, and if we're being fully transparent here, I think our dads had a different kind of hustle. Like, it sounds like your dad worked super hard and got a job. What did he do?
When he first came here, believe it or not, he sliced bread at Alpine Country Club.
Wow.
Yeah, in New Jersey. He was 23 years old. Yeah. So I mean, he was a bus boy, bus runner, and then eventually he got a job as a handyman at a bank. Which he was getting paid practically nothing for, and then the vice president of the bank needed something fixed, and he goes, "Oh, Hector can do that." And then next thing you know, that was my dad was that guy's guy.
Yeah.
And then eventually he became a union worker for 32 BJ, which is the hotel union, not the hotel, the building unions in New York City.
That's great.
Yeah.
My dad was a drug dealer.
That's some shit, man. Seriously?
I used to go on drug
Yeah.
runs with him when I was a kid. It was pretty wild. He was a firefighter, and he was up for. So my parents had me at 16 years old, and he was up for captain for the fire department, and he got caught. They tested him. He got caught, and then from there he just started like selling.
Done
and
with
hustling.
the fire department and hustling.
Done with the fire department, and yeah, I mean, I remember being like 6, 7 years old, just being in the passenger seat while my dad was like, rolling up in people's houses and selling, and I mean, it was wild, because I think that you're less likely to get caught if you have like a kid in the passenger seat, right?
Dude, totally. Cop pulls you over. Where you going? I'm picking up milk.
So not the hustle that I'm necessarily proud of, growing up, but it's interesting. I actually there is something to the Puerto Rican hustle, or when you grow up with no money, where even though he made poor decisions, I also saw the way he charmed the hell out of people and the way that he got the things that he needed, and I think I took that part of it, but for the good. And I think that, that side of the hustle and the charm and this and that, I think that's something that, I think that I adopted that works maybe in my favor. But yeah, it's crazy, wild upbringing, man.
So within that upbringing, though, was there ever a point where you were like, you had a choice in life where you could have said, with that, I feel like a lot of us are given a road choice, and
Yeah.
Can you recall like a moment where you said, okay, this isn't for me, I'm going to.
Yeah, 100%. I remember being a junior in, was it? No, it was my sophomore year in high school. And, I grew up in a Puerto Rican neighborhood. Even to this day, everybody that I grew up with the exception of one person, is still in that neighborhood, or they've been shot, they're in jail. And I remember sitting at the guidance counselor's office, and she said, listen, a lot of these colleges, they really need to fill in their quota. And this is, in whatever it was in the early 90s. And like, if you maintain a BC average, you'll be able to go to whatever college you want to. And for me, I was like, what? It actually took me back. I was like, what does that mean? Like Shrewsbury, which was the town, outside,
I know
outside of
Shrewsbury,
Worcester.
yeah.
They're like, no, anywhere in the country, because there's this need, and that blew my mind. I couldn't believe it, because I never did well in school. I went to school to escape home, and for me it was like a social distraction. And so when I got that, I mean, with the exception of 1 C in math, I mean, I just like nailed it, And from there, I applied to all these schools, and I got into I got accepted to all the ones that I applied to, and I ended up going to UMass Amherst.
Yeah, sure.
But that was the moment for me. The moment for me was realizing that there was something outside of the neighborhood that I grew up in, outside of the lifestyle that I saw growing up. And for me, that was a really empowering moment. And yeah, just the fact that I was the only one to this day, the only one that's gone off to college and I think has been successful at what he does is pretty remarkable.
So is it fair to say at that moment, someone saw something in you that maybe you didn't see in yourself yet?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'll never forget that moment, and grateful.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
'cause
amazing.
if she doesn't say to you, hey, all you need is a C, which, you could pull.
Yeah.
I mean, you got the hustle in you, you could pull a C.
Yeah, that's all I need. Like you just got to give me the information, right?
Sure.
I mean, when you grow up in a bubble where you're not getting all the resources and the information that you need, then what are you going to do? There is nothing that you can do if you don't get it. So for me to get that information was like it was gold, and I ran with it.
I mean, I think that's awesome. So for people who are listening right now, I mean, we can make a million excuses, but one thing about America, as fucked up as it may be right now,
It's
is
a mess, man.
is that this is one of the only countries in the world where you can make those determinations.
Yeah.
And one day you can say to yourself, hey, I'm not going to lead, that life, and I'm going to lead a different life. And if you so choose that, the resources are there. And
Yeah.
sometimes it may be the person that opens the door for you.
Yeah.
And for me, I had a college professor when I was like a grade A idiot when I was 19 years old. And I've had her on the show. And for whatever reason, she was like, what are you, like, she was just like, you're an idiot. But she goes, you're a smart idiot, but you're an idiot right now.
Yeah.
And she's like, you need to go to NYU. And for me, I was thinking, I was at a community school. I was on the 4-year plan to graduate with
Yeah.
my associates. It was on the extended program.
I was going to say that's normally too late.
It's only 2 years. And she was like, what the fuck are you doing with your life, basically, in like a very like cerebral way. She's like, you need to get a scholarship to NYU. And I was
Yeah.
like, I can't do that. And she's like, sure you can. All you need is, at that time, and I didn't even know this existed. It was called the CCTOP, Community College Transfer Opportunity Program.
Great.
Basically, if you could maintain over a 3.0 at Nassau, which all you needed to do was have a pulse at that point.
Yeah.
It was a continuation of high school, basically.
Yeah.
You were guaranteed admission into NYU.
Yeah, it basically is a similar version, whatever version
Yeah.
that is. That's the version that I had
That's just,
to get into school.
And it was like that moment, and I was like, now I applied to NYU, and I've actually never told the story, so it was funny though. But I get a letter of rejection, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, or they told me like all I needed was a 3.0. I got a 3.4. I was all proud of myself.
Yeah.
So I go down.
I mean, you could have had a 3.5.
I go down to the office and I go to the woman. I said, hey, I got a rejection letter. And she goes, what's your social security number? And so I give her my social. And this is when actually you got a letter in the mail. So
Yeah.
Jose and I are starting to date ourselves now. It's before you got emails that you
Yeah,
were in
yeah,
college,
yeah.
right? So, and she goes, no, sir, you're Anthony Vasquez. I said, yeah. She goes, well, we have another Anthony Vasquez who spells his name
Wow.
exactly like you do.
Wow.
He's rejected. You're in. You start classes in 4 weeks. By the way, we need your tuition. What I also didn't realize at the time was
That's amazing.
NYU would have cost me like $86,000 for 2 years. Because of this professor, it cost me $15,000. Right? So
Isn't that beautiful?
It's crazy. So she nominated me for a bunch of different scholarships, which I got. And because of that, I'm here talking to you today. It's crazy
Yeah.
when you extrapolate that out.
I love that.
If not, who knows what I'd do with the rest of my life? Maybe I don't do this, and I'm definitely not having this conversation with you right now. So because of that single choice, someone saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
And look at both of us now. We're
killing
like
it.
putting good stuff out into
Yeah.
the world, being
Yeah.
positive and
Yeah.
And I think that's really I think that's the blessing of growing up in certain atmospheres that the way that I grew up. I think that you kind of when you become an adult, you're like, man, yeah, my childhood was rough and this and that, but it really is a blessing because it just really allows you to put things in perspective and do the opposite, perhaps, of what either do the opposite or maybe even do better, right? If
Yeah.
you had, like your dad, he worked hard. He worked his ass off to make sure that he could provide for you guys,
course.
and you want to make him proud.
Yep.
you
I
know?
say my hard work is a dedication to him. So at
Yeah.
any point when I question how hard I'm working, I think about the fact that he worked 80 hours a week for 25 years without complaining, never took a
Yeah.
day off. And that's some good motivation right there.
See, that's what we got to tell the millennials.
Yeah.
These stories. People
Yeah.
not taking days off.
No, there's no. My dad literally, to this day, and I just talked about this recently. He always helps me with projects, no matter what. My dad's always there. If I told him he could come take pictures at a wedding, he'd be there. he loves to work, but he had the flu, right? He's sick,
Yeah.
sick, sick, and he's there working with me on my house. And I'm like, Dad, you got to go home, and he's like, no. Like just no. And he's there working. And finally, he was so sick, he stayed in bed for like a day. And then the next day, with the fever, coughing, and the flu, he's still back at the house helping me.
love that.
And he's 80 years old. So it's a mentality, it's a mindset, but it's also, I feel like it's genetic. Like, and I'm blessed to have had that. And I think the other thing that I thought was awesome in talking to you is we both have very Latin last names. And this is something I wanted to mention to you is, about 10 years ago, someone goes, with his last name, he'll never be successful in the New York City wedding industry.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, really? I'm like, you said that, the person that, and I was like, that's awesome. I'm like, if I didn't have enough fucking motivation in my life, you just lit another spark. I was like, because now I'm going to prove you wrong. And that someone with the last name Vasquez will become, what I need to become in this industry in spite of what you may think. And I know, for me, it's a badge of pride.
And I think our names, it's like sort of like an opposite thing where because it's more your last name, and for me it's my first name, right? Like Jose, like every other Puerto Rican, Mexican, Argentinian, it's Jose, right? My last name is a little bit odd. It's not so common for. Usually it's. Did you say Colon? And nobody pronounces it right. We were talking about that earlier. It's a Jose Roll-On band deodorant or Jose Roll-On the floor. Like it's Rolon. Nobody ever gets that right. But yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I used to not like my name in growing up. I was like, oh man, I wish it was like, Patrick.
No, I went through the same thing. I wish my last name was Smith. Because kids would sometimes make fun of you for being. Because I grew up in a mixed but predominantly white neighborhood. So I was like the token. Myself and in school there was this kid Eric Gonzalez and me. Like we were the only two Spanish kids. Yeah. There were 2 black kids and 18 white kids. So we were definitely the minority.
Yeah.
And also 30 years ago, I just feel like things were very different in that sense. I feel like Latin culture has gotten a lot more prominent, even given what's going on in our country. I feel like we get a lot more props now than we did back then.
I mean, if you look at Jennifer Lopez, for example, right? Like that's a great example. I think they wanted her to change her name so many times, and don't go out there as Jennifer Lopez. Nobody's gonna. And she went against that, and I mean, she's a household name.
I mean, they wanted her to be Jennifer Aniston.
Is that right?
No, but the model of like.
I was like, there would have been 2.
Like they wanted that, like another Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah,
she said true to who she was, Jenny from the Block.
Yeah. Well, now we own it. We own our name proudly.
So I know we got like briefly into it, and we spoke about fatherhood. And
Let's do it.
I think, as a man, you were faced with some serious decisions.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And I think every man in the world needs to listen to what you're about to say, because I think most men would have taken the easy route out there. I think it's very easy to, your story is so powerful and so moving and so life-changing. I don't know, I'm so curious, first off, for you to share that story, but then to find out what your mindset was at that moment.
Yeah, so when my husband and I got married in 2010, it was great, right? We had been together for 3 years, and we eventually decided to have children together. And I mean, on the heels of Pride right now, and I feel really grateful that we live in the times that we live in, that we're even able to have children. And so we were really excited about it. We did it through surrogacy. We put in one of each, one of his, one of mine, and then comes out a little white boy. I knew he wasn't biologically mine. It's like, what? I thought for sure mine was going to moonwalk all over his ass.
He was going to salsa pass right.
It didn't work. So comes out this beautiful white boy, and it was great. It was magic. We loved being these 2 dads in the world of in our bubble in New York City, and when we were 2 months, when our son was 2 months old, Avery, he comes out Tim comes out with Avery in his arms, and he's like, baby, you know what I'm thinking? And I'm like, pizza or Chinese? He's like, no, I think we should have another. I'm like, what? That's like wild, And we did. We decided to have another. We decided to go for it again. And then this time we knew, because Avery was his biological child, that we would just put my stuff in there this time. And we did, and then when Avery was 8 months old and we were 11 weeks pregnant with the twins, my husband passed away, and it was unexpected. He was in his hotel room. It was a heart attack, in Pennsylvania, which presented a lot of problems because at the time, same-sex marriage wasn't even legal in Pennsylvania. So that's a whole other set of problems. But yeah, I mean, as you can imagine, that presented. You're already, and by the way, I was at a wedding industry event. It was a Christmas event. It was December 11th in 2013, and if you can imagine the juxtaposition of that, right? So, I'm at this Christmas event and there's these, Christmas songs and candy canes. We're having hot cocoa and we're shooting a video. It was for Love Inc. magazine. And people in our industry that we know, Viva Max, Jove Meyer, Roy Mizrahi, a lot of these folks were there when I got the call. And I collapsed and I couldn't comprehend. And people from the industry carried me out of this event. And yeah, I mean, it just, then at 11 weeks, it hit me at some point that night that I only have a week to decide to carry through with a pregnancy. Because at 12 weeks, at least according to the state of Georgia, you can't make that decision anymore. So for me, I was clear. I was definitely gonna abort. I was like, who the hell am I to raise 3 kids on my own? And then, on the very last day the day of Tim's service, I just sat there. I remember I sat at the edge of the bed and I had the eulogy. I was practicing the eulogy. And I made a decision there that my son just lost his father. And what if something were to happen to me? And I didn't want to leave him alone in this world. And so I scratched a little part out of the eulogy, and 6 hours later, I was standing up in a church in front of 500 people, and it was in the eulogy that I announced that we were pregnant because I made the decision that morning to follow through. And nobody knew we were pregnant because we were waiting for the 12 weeks to maybe tell a few people. A couple people knew that we were going for it again, but you could imagine like that church and the audible gasp when I made that decision. So yeah, I followed through, and and to be honest, now I have a 6-year-old and 2 5-year-old beautiful girls, and on top of it, girls was like my last option.
But they'll love you like no other.
I'm telling you, but for me, it's it wasn't even supposed to result in twins anyway. And my preference, my choices was if, I guess I should have a girl. There's a misconception being gay that you want girls. I didn't want girls. I'm a boy. So I only know being a boy. And so I didn't want to, do pretty things. And so but I figured I should have one girl. So I was like, okay, boy and a girl. If it's not a boy and a girl, then it should be 2 boys. And then then I ended up getting 2 girls. But now it's I can't even imagine any other dynamic. And the truth is, I actually am glad that it is 2 girls, because I do look at my son as there was something special about him being the only male, but also being my husband's biological child, and they look exactly alike. So it's a beautiful, beautiful blessing. And all 3 have the same egg donors, so all 3 are biologically connected.
So to look back on that, so you get a phone call.
Yeah.
And I mean, one thing I think that right there in and of itself is, we always think tomorrow's promised to us, and in all essence, right now is here, tomorrow may not be. And I think, your husband's passing is a perfect, unfortunate example of that. It's you think you have your rest of your life when now it's that was taken away from you unfairly. I don't think there's a way to explain that the universe or anything. Initially the shock had to be overwhelming, I assume. Because holy shit. You have a life at home now to take care of. How old at the time? Your son.
My son, 8 months old.
So he's, it's the initial of, I can imagine, you must have been thinking he's not going to really ever remember his dad.
He's not going to remember his dad.
One of his dads.
And to be honest, excuse me, And to be honest, like I didn't even want to look at my son for the first couple weeks.
Oof.
I didn't want to pick him up because he looks just like my husband, and it was just like this reminder of this beautiful boy that looks like has the same lips and the same dopey ears. You know, it's like that was hard. Now I can't get enough. Like now it's amazing.
How do you keep your husband's ex? Well, how do you refer first off? His
Late husband.
Late husband.
Yeah.
How do you keep his legacy alive so that one day that young man you're raising knows that he was his son?
Yeah. Anybody that knows me knows that I keep his legacy alive and well. So I have a website that's dedicated to him, rememberingtimothymerrill.com. And I have videos. I mean, I document everything. I documented our whole relationship because I was so happy in it. And I was like, I just wanted, people to see what I was feeling. And so, so there's a lot of videos, and my kids have seen videos of Daddy Tim. And they all know who Daddy Tim is. And there's pictures of him around the house. Not too many, because I think there needs to be a balance for new love. But everybody knows who Daddy Tim is, and I'll do posts. That first year after he passed away, I did. I would do a post every Thursday. I would do a Throwback Thursday for a year religiously. So there were like 54 Throwback Thursdays, and then every month on the 11th, which is the date that he passed away, I would do kind of like month 1, month 2 of where I was in the grieving process. And sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was deep, sometimes, it was me cursing out at God. Sometimes it was I had nothing to say. And I think that resonated with a lot of people, that I was being, vulnerable and authentic. And that really, it's interesting. People talk about social media, and we do live in a social media driven world. But I think for me, it helped me. Being a single father, to be able to put things out into the world and to sort of get that virtual support, that was actually really, I think it helped me. As much as we want to say negative things about social media, there are ways that it really empowers us and helps us. And I had my own big support system at home, but to sort of have that medium was really, really useful. So there's plenty of, there's been articles. Huffington Post did an article, People Magazine did something. They had me as like, fathers we admire. There's a lot of different publications out there that's written about my story. And so those are all the ways that his memory is kept alive, which is incredible.
Man, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think, as a man though, like this is where I think you could have gotten a free pass on that. I think as men, you could have walked away from that situation, and no one would have ever been like, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah.
I think it would have been understood, but you didn't.
No, and you know what? I wouldn't have knocked anybody for making a different decision. But yeah, I knew for me that it was the best decision. And here's the thing about being a man too, and I think there's some double standards that go on, and we could get into that a little bit. But when you're a mother, it's expected to have motherly instinct, right?
Of
I mean,
course.
you have it. I mean, you just have it, right? We don't have that. And so in some ways, that sort of worked to my advantage as a single father, because people are like, ay bendito Jose, él no sabe, he doesn't know, right? So the mad support that I would get from people was abundant. And I knew that I was going to have that support. I just needed to ask it. I mean, there was a reason why I said it at the eulogy. I mean, I'm staring at 500 people, so I knew if I put that out to the universe that I was going to get it back. And so I felt empowered in that way, and I knew that I would get the support that I needed. And the wedding industry was phenomenal. I was the new cat in town, and I still feel like I'm the new cat in town. But when I broke out, so when Tim and I first got pregnant with Avery, we were going to make a decision. Do I stay at home to be a stay-at-home dad, or do I stay at the Foundry where I'm comfortable? And I thought being a stay-at-home dad sounded fucking amazing. I was like, I want to be a stay-at-home dad. And then I realized in one weekend that, you know what? I don't want to be a stay-at-home dad. I realize I'm saying that. I want that because I want to avoid my fear of failing by going out on my own. And then I realized, I was like, well, fuck it. What do I have to lose? And so I launched my business, Jose Rolon Events, the same month my son was born. And thank God, because had I been a stay-at-home dad when my husband passed away, it would have been difficult to get back in the industry. So in 2013, in 1 year, my son was born in March. I launched my business in March, and my husband passed away in December. So it was a wild year, you know.
I mean, I think that's probably more than some people may suffer through in a life, and honestly, in a lifetime. You know, I mean,
it was a lot, and you know, the one thing I want to add to that too is how incredible the wedding industry was. So in being the new guy, people just knew me as Jose from the Foundry. You know, oh, this is Jose from the Foundry. 3 caterers came together for the reception. 2 caterers that didn't even like each other, like straight up did not like each other. Studio 450 gave me their venue. All these people came together, and the eulogy, the church service, was recorded by Mackenzie Miller. I didn't even know who Mackenzie Miller was. I didn't even know it was being recorded. I didn't know about this till like a month later when she came to me and said, "Hey, I want you to have this." So I feel really fortunate to be in our industry because there's just so much love and so much support. And I mean, I'll say it to this day. It's because, you know, I think I've got my family, my core family, who are my friends, who we've known each other for 20 years. Then there's the wedding industry, also my family. You know, I think that we have each other's backs, and when shit goes down, there are people that'll show up for you.
All this is going on, right? So I'm trying to wrap my head around it as best I can, just listening to it, absorbing what you're saying. What's your mindset? I mean, at some point, like, you're like, all right, I have now 3 lives. That, I mean, like to break this down.
And I had a dog and 2 cats.
The emotional responsibility.
Yeah.
You're grieving, obviously.
Yeah.
Probably still in shock.
Yeah.
You're about to, in 6 months, now be responsible for 2 more lives, twins no less.
Twins.
So you have
Female
2 babies
twins.
coming home, 3 mouths to feed.
Yeah.
All these kids are going to be under 2 years of age.
Yeah.
You know, you still have another infant who's now just starting to walk. You lost your husband and you started a business.
Yeah.
Shit's real.
Shit's real.
Quick.
Yeah. Real quick.
I mean, I'm going to venture to say some of your upbringing probably helped because you saw some shit when you were younger and you said, all right, if I can live through that, I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that, you know, I grew up with, you know, we said in the beginning, you know, my dad was a drug dealer. And my mom became, you know, she got into drugs as well after my dad passed away. And after he passed away, she got into drugs. And, you know, and I grew up with a lot of crap around me. But you just keep doing what you're supposed to do. You keep moving forward. You keep hustling because there's really, you know, in your mind, you really think, you don't really think you have any other option. And, you know, and I have to, I'm going to keep it real right now. So, you know, both my parents passed away. And when my mother passed away, I did everything wrong. Everything wrong. I did drugs. I was having I was in all kinds of debauchery. I was doing plenty of drugs because, you know, I was 23 at the time. It was accessible. And I distracted myself in unhealthy ways completely. And I think, you know, fast forward, now I lose my husband. I knew better. I'm a little bit older. I'm a father. And, you know, I learned that this time I have to grieve differently. I have to do it in healthy ways, have healthy distractions. And so, you know, and the other thing too is you can sit there and you can grieve. You know, you could wake up in the morning and you could bawl your eyes out, which I did plenty. But you bawled your eyes out because you got woken up by a crying baby. So you only have about 5 minutes to cry. And so you just get right up and you wipe those tears and you walk into that room and greet that, you know, boy in his crib and with the biggest smile on your face. And I'm getting emotional because I will always, always be grateful for my children. They saved my life. Those kids saved my life. Because had Avery not been there for me to take care of, I probably would have distracted myself worse than I had when my mom passed away. So, yeah, I mean, they'll know, like they'll know when as they get older what they did for me, and in return, I feel indebted to them as well. You know, I want to make sure that I show up as a father every single day, and I give them everything that they need. You know, I want to be able to give back to them, to, you know, what the life that they gave me, you know?
I mean, I think it's a crazy story because so many men so many men walk away from children that are already born, you know, and that's that are already a life, and they take the easy way out, which is just to leave that relationship or leave that child for whatever their selfish reasons are.
Yeah.
But you chose to give life to those two children and honoring your husband. I mean, and that's pretty crazy in the sense of, at any moment were you ever like, what the fuck am I doing right now?
Of course.
Okay.
Every now and then maybe when I have a few of these, I'm like, yo, what the hell? What was I thinking? Yeah, I mean, of course. There was plenty of those days. But look, this is something I tell everybody all the time. When you're a two-parent household, and this is where we're going to get into a little bit of the double standard. When there's a two-parent household, nobody ever offers help to those parents. Nobody ever does, because people assume that they got it, even though they don't, even though parenting is still a shit show, even though it's hard. You know, so unless those parents actively ask for it, parents don't get help. With me, nobody ever assumed I got it. They didn't. My support was so large. I mean, I was still a year and a half. I was still kicking people out of the house. So, and on top of it being a male, which is what I was telling you, I bendito Jose, you know, we got to go in there, arroz con habichuela, we got to, you know, just feed him. Está flaquito, you know. But yeah, I think that was the blessing. That was one of the blessings, and one of the healthy distractions is that my support system was so massive from the wedding industry, from my family in Massachusetts, from, you know, the family that I had here, and that really, they're the ones that lifted me up and allowed me to take breaks when I needed, allowed me to cry when I needed, allowed me to go to the movies by myself. And so, you know, then eventually you start moving through grieving, and look, grieving isn't linear. You know, and when I talk about grieving doesn't just mean when you lose somebody. Grieving is when you're not with your, you know, ex anymore. Grieving is when, you know, you're going through a divorce. You know what I mean? It comes in different shapes, but grieving, the stages of grieving are all the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's just how you manage it and how you deal with it. And the best thing to have is to have your support system be as big as it can. And the other thing too, I was like, who the fuck is ever going to date somebody with 3 kids? Like, who is going to date somebody with 3 kids? And, you know, this is where, like, some of the double standard comes in, because, you know, I have a friend, she's a good friend of mine. She's got 3 kids. She's my age, and a man will not even touch her. A man will not even get close to her, because a man is like, you got 3 kids? I'm all set. I'm going to go produce over here. In the gay world, I come to find out that there are a lot of gay men that want to have children, but they don't have the finances and the resources to have the children. I mean, it's $100,000 a pop. So, you know, so the next best thing for a gay man who wants children that don't have the resources, let me find someone who does have kids. So surprisingly, dating was never an issue. If anything, it was sort of seen like as an asset. Like, you could put me and her next to each other and have the same profile, and they're going to assume that she needs help. There's something wrong with her. Bendito. You know, with me, it's like, oh, look at him. He's raising kids by himself. That's so sexy. He must have his shit together. He must be rich. Oh, tiene dinero. He's got money. And it could be the complete opposite. She could be rich, and I could be, you know, in a studio apartment in the Bronx with 3 kids and 2 cats and a dog, you know, but it's a complete double. But I have to say that double standard worked for me. And,
sure.
And, you know, I was actually with a guy a year and a half after Tim passed away. Unexpectedly, I met this really great, awesome Scottish guy named Alex, and he was beautiful and amazing. And we had, you know, it was working for a while until it didn't work. And, you know, and now I'm with someone, Pablo. We've been together for a little over a year, and he loves my kids, and my kids love him, and he's also a father, so he understands what that game is. But yeah, it's kind of amazing how dating has never been an issue, and, you know, I've been able to find love again, and been able to be strong and keep moving forward with my business, my kids, and my love life.
What's the biggest hurdle you're faced with now?
right now.
You're raising 3 kids and running your business and all those things.
I think it's the balance, right? We talk about balance quite a bit in our industry. And I think that for me, the balance can be really difficult. I know that I'm the father that I am because I have my work. I know that I do the work that I do because I have my children to go home to. Like one feeds the other. I would not be good if I was just doing one or the other. And so that to me is really amazing. But I think what comes with that is you still can't give 100% all the time to both, right? So perfect example, we were at Engage. I thought that was a really important thing to go to, and it was amazing. We had a good time.
We did.
But it was a business decision that I had to make. Now, I've not missed anything with my kids from all their little step-up graduations and their performances and all that. But I did miss Avery's dance performance because I was in the Bahamas. And I'm rolling up in the Bahamas and I'm still feeling a little guilty.
Yeah.
And same thing, sometimes, when your kids get sick and you have to maybe reschedule as a single father, then you have to reschedule your appointment because it's more important to be home with your sick kid. And, then that gets tricky. Then you feel bad that you didn't give the client that you needed. So I'd say the biggest hurdle is just to have, and people that know me think I probably have a pretty well balanced. People say I don't know how you do it. I think my support system has a lot to do with it, but yeah, the balance is really tricky. It's really hard, and I think whether if you're a single parent or not, the balance between work and being a parent is always going to be there. The challenges of it.
In paying tribute to your late husband, what would be one value, one virtue that you want your children to carry on from him?
From him? Oh, that's such a good question. I love that. I think he was a farm boy, and he had the most amazing childhood. He got to run free, and our childhood, we had completely different childhoods. And one of the things I loved about him is he was just always smiling, and he was always happy, and he was, he said I was boyish, but I always found him to be really boyish in the best way. And he taught me what he taught me is to love myself for the first time. That's one of the greatest values I got from Tim. But to not take everything so seriously, to sometimes keep things light. And when we decided to be parents together, one of the things we both agreed on is that we want our kids to be kids. You got these cats in Tribeca sending their 3-year-olds to Mandarin class. It's insane out there, especially in New York City, And so I refuse to do any of that stuff, all those extracurricular stuff. I'm getting a hard time from one of their uncles saying they should be in this and they should be in that. I'm like, I want my kids to be kids. I want them to play. Sure. And that's something that Tim, he played a lot. We played a lot. And so that's something that I want to be able to give my kids, and I think he's a big reason for that.
What do you think the greatest lesson that Tim left you with was?
The biggest lesson he left me with. There it is. It's live life to the fullest. Be
present.
Be present, and we were so present with each other, and I have to say, there's not one single thing I wish we would have done differently. When he passed away, I was, in terms of, you always hear those stories when somebody passes away. Oh my God, we got into this big fight. Oh, we weren't talking for a couple days, or I wish I wouldn't have said this. I cursed him out. I threw his flat screen out the window, and he gets into a car accident from the flat screen that I threw on the corner. And for me, there's not a single thing I wish I would have said or done differently, and because we were really present, and that's for me that's it. That's the answer. Just I don't take a single thing for granted, and I'm present. And I think I'm really good about that. I'm always throwing out blessings. I'm always grateful and letting people know I'm appreciative, and I try to teach that to my kids too, even at this age. I always, it's funny. A lot of parents will say, "Oh, don't forget to say thank you." I'm like, "Don't forget to say thank you, and don't forget to look them in the eyes." Yeah. It's always, they're like, "Thank you." I'm like, "Eyes."
Yeah.
You know, for me, that's about respect and really true gratitude.
If I'm a big believer that whatever your religious beliefs are, that people's spirits and their energy carry on past their maybe physical life here, right? And I
Yeah.
think you have you have a perfect example of that because you have a child
Yeah.
that is of him, and I think
Yeah.
to negate the fact that that is a piece of him living in this universe would be foolish, right?
Yeah.
So with that being said, it's fair to say he's watching, I feel like, over
Yeah.
you, and his energy and his spirit obviously are in your household, just present in your son.
Yeah.
If you were able to have a conversation with him right now,
God damn, man, you are going in. We're going in here.
what would you say to him?
Oh, jeez. I would just say thank you. I mean, it's just thank you. My kids would not exist in this world if it wasn't for him. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the $100,000 or the $50,000. I didn't have the $400. You know.
Yeah.
So. You know, his love, those kids are here because of the love that we created together. And I would say thank you. I mean, I cannot believe that I am here as a gay father in 2019. And I can say I have 3 beautiful, healthy children. And it's because of him. So I would say thank you. Yeah.
What do you think he would say to you?
Stop dirtying the house so much. You're still fucking messy. Clean that kitty litter. I think he would definitely say all of that, but I think he would say you're doing a good job, and I'm proud of you. And our kids are doing well, and they're amazing, and you're doing well.
That's
Yeah.
fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Through all this, right? You've come out on the other end. You have these 3 beautiful children.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's definitely a show about life but business as well, right?
Yeah.
How has your cumulative life experiences, right? So Boricua growing up in the projects, parents, doing what they had to do, and maybe not setting the best example for a young man, to where you now. You rewrote your story, and I always talk about framing, right? We could frame our lives however we want. You could have framed your life and said, "I'm just going to turn into my dad," or not, and you reframed yourself and said, "Hey, I'm going to become someone different," and the polar opposite of that. I'm going to raise these 3 beautiful children, and I'm going to give them a chance at life that that I maybe didn't have, from a business standpoint. And then to wait on top of that. You lose your husband, you start a business, you have 3 children. What were the fundamental lessons that made you as a business owner? I mean, I'm sure the motivation was there because it's like, fuck, I got to feed 3 kids tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself is like, hey, I need to start making money now, yesterday.
Yeah.
I just lost my partner,
Yeah.
which, raising children is expensive to begin with 2 incomes, let alone on 1 now.
Yeah.
So what'd you walk away with in terms of like the motivation right there, the mindset to say, hey, I have to feed my family?
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm answering it, but the motivation was, I think automatically what happens, and there's a study out there that says that single mothers tend to move on quicker than anyone else, and it's because they're in survival mode, and I was definitely in survival mode. And also, I'm not somebody who does finances. Me and money, it's still a struggle. You have no other option. You just got to keep moving. You got to keep moving. You got to start networking. You got to start, some people might say when I first started the business, I was kind of like, kind of half-assing it because I had this rich husband at home. And there's probably, maybe some truth to that. I think I was dipping my toes, and then, I was I was comfortable with growing at a pace. And for me, when that happened, it was like, oh no, I need to grow now. Like I need to get some weddings, on the books and get those deposits in and execute, do a really great job to make sure that, I continue to grow my business. And here we are.
And we got deep. Let's talk about some fun shit. I know you like the salsa.
Are you kidding me? Oh my God,
Although I didn't witness it and engage.
Yeah, that rumor keeps circulating. I don't know where people get that from.
I didn't see anything go out of engage though. So
No.
is that a hidden secret there?
Listen, the dance floor is my happy place.
Okay.
It's my happy place, and I love salsa. I mean, I grew up watching. My parents were actually salseros. Like they would, again, they had me at 16 years old, so like they were 21 when I was 5, and they would sit me down on the couch and they would start. My dad would spin my mom. They would practice because they would come to New York and compete, and they would come home with trophies and with money, and so that was always in my blood and in my family, and I love salsa. It moves me, and I also love I love hip hop too. I grew up listening to hip hop, and so when I went off to college, I choreographed hip hop and salsa, and that's part of the reason why with all of my couples they get 3 1.5 hour dance lessons for their first dance, because I don't want them to look foolish
That's
on the dance
awesome.
floor. I think there's one other time where all eyes are on you, and cake cutting is not one of them. Like, cut out the cupcaking.
I love
the
Cake cutting. I love it.
But yeah, I mean, I think, and for me, and I'm not the one that choreographs my couples. I have a choreographer, Renato Grace. He's Juilliard trained. He's amazing. But yeah, and even when we go to networking events, I mean, even at Engage, like of course, I'm a social butterfly and everything, but my preference is I'll mingle for 30 minutes, chit chat, but then for the rest of the time, you can find me on the dance floor. I love being on the dance floor because you don't got to talk to anybody, and you get to just dance and have a good time.
Well, for those of you going to Engage in Mexico, there'll be some Latin music there, so you can check Jose out.
Oh, I'm going.
Are you really?
I'm
Okay.
going. I'm going.
All right.
I'm going to
Nice.
Nuzuk.
So then watch out. He'll be in Nuzuk.
Yeah.
They better have some salsa music down there for that.
Are you
Come on.
kidding
It's
me?
in Mexico.
It could be something else. I'll do a little bachata.
A little bit.
Whatever.
So one question I ask all my guests is, and I'm really curious to hear your response to this, is looking back on your life 10 years ago,
Yeah.
if you could speak to yourself and take one lesson that person now could tell that person then, obviously you've been through so much trials and tribulation, what would that one takeaway be?
Don't ever get comfortable. Don't ever get comfortable. You think that you reach a certain place in your life and you've made it. And, an example is, I lost my parents. I met Tim. I thought I made it. I'm like, this is why this happened, to meet this incredible human being. And then that got taken away from me. So it's like, I got cocky. Like, don't get cocky. Don't get comfortable. Be grateful. Count your blessings. But don't ever be comfortable. The moment you get comfortable, I feel like something's about to happen. Something's always going to happen.
Sure.
So, don't get comfortable and stay grateful.
And I think for you'd have a really good insight into if you were to leave your children with just one legacy about yourself, what would it be?
It would be have a good time. Like, have a good time and be present. I think that's something even now we're on our gadgets, we're on our phones. There's like how many equipments we have in this room right now.
A lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
And we're rarely looking up anymore. And whether if it's on the subway, I used to, when I moved here in 99, one of my favorite things was when I lived in the Bronx. One of my favorite things was just to sit on the subway, and I would come down to the village. That's where I worked, and I loved watching people. Like, you go from having mostly Dominicans on the train, right? And then you see that shift happening as you come further down. It starts to change. People swap out. And then by the time you get to the West Village, it's a bunch of queens screaming and hooting and hollering. And I miss that. We don't do that anymore. We don't just put our phone. We didn't have our cell phones. And I subscribe to it too. I forget often to put my phone down. And, so... And I think it's going to be even harder for our kids. It's hard for us. I kind of consider us as sort of the in-between generation. We're always negotiating, and with our kids, they're not even gonna, it's just going to be what they know. My kid goes to the flat screen and tries to swipe it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not swipeable.
Not yet.
Now you got marks on my flat screen. You got peanut butter on my flat screen right now.
And Tim wouldn't be happy about the peanut butter on the
He
flat
wouldn't be
screen,
happy
would
about the flat. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's just about have fun and be present. You know, one of my favorite things from Engaged, one of my biggest takeaways, we're segueing a little bit, but Simon T. Riley,
Yeah.
he did, you know, he has that book Spark.
Yep.
And I had, you know, it was my first Engaged, and I was just there for 30 minutes, sitting there, and he was the first speaker. And one of the things that I loved is, you know, we're so busy trying to get ahead and climb, and he said, stop ascending vertically and start creating and building horizontally. And to me, that was like beautiful, like that, because if we're you and I were like, we're creating together and we're building relationships together we're gonna rise.
Yeah.
You know, but we're so caught up in just, you know, and on top of it being in New York, you know, it's about money and it's about getting ahead.
Yeah.
And
then with social media now, I feel like it's also leading a life of comparison that doesn't.
Oh,
exist.
man.
Because the lives people post are not the lives they lead.
yeah, it's your Instagram life, right? Marcy Bloom said that.
It's what it is.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fictitious life. Like, you know, people might think, oh, he posted a beautiful picture of his 3 kids. That's in that moment.
Yeah.
The other 23 hours, there might be diapers, doctors, fevers,
Yeah.
temper tantrums.
You didn't see that video where my son was trying to breastfeed on my left nipple? Like, no, man, I don't have it. I don't have a left titty.
Yeah, it's all the in between that people lose out on.
Yeah, and you know, I'm usually like pretty good with also like showcasing some of the bad. Like I have a video that's out there. It's probably my most popular one still, where I literally have all 3 of them having a meltdown. It was like a domino effect. I can't remember what it was, but like it was I didn't give one a chip or something, but like one after another, all 3 of them, they were all under 2 years old, having a full on meltdown. You know, even when I was single, there was another one I posted on Instagram where, you know, all 3 of them again are having meltdowns, and I'm like, is this the single guy you want to date?
But I think in moments like that, sometimes just bringing laughter to the situation.
Yeah, I mean,
not
yeah,
a bad remedy. Because
Yeah,
what
you
else
have
can
to.
you do?
But yeah, just going back to just being present, I think it's such a challenge right now, and I think it's going to be even more challenging for our kids. And I don't know how to, you know, how to help facilitate that, but just, you know, not have them have, you know, I see these kids in restaurants right now, and I get it. Like I get that parents want to have their adult conversation, and you know, they give their kids iPads, and I'm not judging anybody that does it, because people have different needs, but for me, I don't want my kids being at a table with an iPad. I don't want my kids being on the phone, and you know, and I try to teach my kids how to like not interrupt. I'm having an adult conversation. I'm pretty strict that way. But if they're gonna sit there and have a tantrum or cry or whatever, I'd rather that, or I'd rather just take them out than to give them a gadget, because they're already gonna be having these gadgets in no time.
Yeah. And also, you're raising children that eventually are going to need to be, you know, whether it's in a workplace or be able to sit at a table and have a conversation, not through a cell phone. Like
Yes,
life is
wild.
still about this, even though we do it a lot through this. And
Will
if
it
you
be
can't do
about this though? Like if we look back, if we fast forward like 20 years from now.
I hope so. Because without this, what's the like to me, without these kind of conversations, without the real authentic sitting down, and the one thing that, you know, from committed to do this show is I've had amazing conversations with people, and something that I felt was missing in my life, and this has really fulfilled that. I really hope so, and I think humans have an insatiable desire, whether we know it or not, because of our tribal mentality and the way we evolved to really connect with one another.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we, you know, and Simon Sinek is a great author I love, and he talks about we need that human connection. We actually want it. It's in our DNA.
Yeah.
And being on a device and communicating through a device is inherently not natural.
Yeah.
And how can you be fulfilled in life without having real connections with people, you know? And I mean, that's been the blessing for me of doing this, is would I have ever sat down with you having this conversation and gotten to know you on a whole different level than 20 minutes and engage? And the answer is no.
Of course.
'Cause now I know that, you know, like I know you now. Like I can be like, yo, Jose's a fucking cool guy. Like, you know, we sat down and spoke.
I'm glad that's the result of this.
That's the result. The end result is that connection. And I think that without that, what's the purpose of anything else? You know,
I agree.
Now that being said, having raised two girls for 6 years, I see the trials and tribulations with that, especially.
You
when
said one is 12.
You have 12 and 10,
12
and then you have multiple families raising those children with different ethical values on all ends. So you now have all these different adult influences, and trying to find that inner balance of what is appropriate, what isn't appropriate. You know, what I think is good as a stepdad versus what their dad, dad thinks or what mom thinks, and you try to navigate all those things. And for me, I hate the devices. Like I mean, like we were out for ice cream last week, and I'm like, "Yo, hello," and I was like, "How was your day?" And I was like, "Oh, it was really good." "Oh, what'd you do today?" "I went to the pool. I hung out with my friends." They're like, "Why are you talking to yourself?" I'm like, "Because you guys are on your phones." So I'm like, and they were like, "Are you out of your mind?" I'm like, "No, like put your phones down for like 5 minutes. I want to know about like what's going on in your life right now, not what's on Instagram."
Yeah. I was on the subway the other day, and these two teenagers walked on, and one said, "Hey man, how's it going?" "I'm good. How you doing?" "I'm good. You're good?" "Yeah. So what's going on?" "Nothing. I'm good." But are you good? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's wild now. Like kids don't even know how to talk now.
Yeah, or have a full blown conversation.
Have a full blown conversation.
But I know I just want to be conscious of your time because I know you have somewhere to be today, right?
Yeah.
And but before we wrap up, I just want to I want to commend you. You know, as a man, I think your story is admirable.
Thank you.
I think there are a lot of men in the world who, if they lived up to half of what you did, would be twice as good of a man. And I mean that.
appreciate that.
It's easier. Men get escape. We have an escape route, and we can just say, it's not inherently in our nature. And you threw that upside down. And I don't know that there's anyone else who has a story anywhere near you. It's so intense. And I think it needs to be celebrated and applauded, especially in today's day and age where everyone wants to say masculinity is toxic. And you've proven it's not. It can actually be beautiful, and you can rise to the occasion. And I think most men, 95%, would not have done what you did, and that needs to be celebrated, and you need to be applauded and commended because it's fucking just admirable what you did and what you're doing. And I think there's something beautiful. There's a life lesson for every man walking this planet that does not have children yet, or for ones that do. Myself included. I mean, listening to you makes me think about, hey, being more present, being more focused on the kids. Maybe work isn't always the most important because, maybe tomorrow's not going to be here. And if tomorrow on your deathbed, if you even have that opportunity to have a deathbed, has anyone ever said, "I wish I worked more"? So I want to thank you for being a beautiful human being, for being an amazing father. I don't think there's a question about it, and I don't think most men, like I said, would have been able to do what you did.
I don't know what to say to that, man. I appreciate that.
That's the truth,
so
man.
much.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day, and it would be much easier for you to not share this story because it is intense, and you did, and you were fully open. And I remember when you said your email to me was, "I'm a open book, a fucking open book, open book, so ask me anything."
Ask me anything.
Yeah, and you shared your story, and to everyone listening, they need to commend you as well because it's fucking awesome.
Thank you.
If you would, on a high note, I want you to tell everyone, people in the industry, where if they want to hire you for your services. I also know you have some fun stuff going on, so please, I want you to plug that.
Yeah.
You have a cool Instagram handle, please.
So, you could obviously find me on Instagram. We're talking about social media. So, at Jose Rolon Events. My personal is NYC Gay Dad.
Cool.
I have quite a bit of following there. I do, every year I do a Father's Day. I have a little bit of voice in the gay community, and every year I do a Father's Day event. It's a potluck for other gay dads, and
That's
it's
very cool.
growing every year. And this year we had 80 people. Of course, we were outnumbered by the children because we can't just have one. But it's great. A lot of sponsors came on board, Everyday Athlete and Oysters XO. Patina came in and furnished the whole thing. And I just became, in January, got elected as a board member at the Brooklyn Children's Museum. And that's been really phenomenal. And then professionally, I think, one of the things that I love, which I have to have you on, I do a series called The Wedding Buzz.
Cool.
And I basically sit down the way that you and I have been for, 45 minutes to an hour, and I knock it down to 60 seconds of interview. I actually just changed it to like 120 minutes of 20 seconds of interview and then bloopers. And everybody loves the bloopers.
The bloopers are funny.
Yeah, and I've done it with everybody from Marcy Bloom and Ron Ben Israel, Tinsel, Pinch. I just did one with them, and it's fun. And I think people in the industry are really loving it because it's short, it's accessible, it's visual, it's all on video, and people love the bloopers. People like to see us being talking about being human, and people like to see us mess up and screw up and have a good old time.
Good.
And serves drinks the way that you do as well.
Well, I want to thank you again. Guys, you heard it here. Jose Rolon. And again, I want to thank you. Definitely check him out. And we will share all his links in our show notes. Thank you, bro. Thank you for being a beautiful human being. And thank you for being the dad you are.
Salud.
Salud.